Okay, The Prince Warriors and the Swords of Rima by Priscilla Shirer. Chapter 4, The Black Dragon. Dragon! Evan shouted. Xavier looked up in time to see a dark shape slipping around the side of the mountain. Perhaps it was Tannen keeping an eye on them, or a big bird like an eagle. Maybe there were eagles in Ahortas. He couldn't be sure. He just knew he couldn't let the kids get sidetracked. This climb required all their attention. Stay focused, he said to the others. Keep moving. A few minutes later, Levi called out, There it is again. This time Xavier saw it too, a sleek black dragon circling the top of the mountain. Its massive wings spread wide, gliding on updrafts. Its forked tail appeared to be covered in long, sharp spikes. It was definitely not Tannen. What if it attacks us? Asked Manuel. We can't use our shields and climb at the same time. Just keep going, said Xavier. Yet he couldn't help but wonder what that dragon was going to do. If it saw them, why didn't it attack? What was it waiting for? Xavier felt a sweat breaking out on his brow, despite the fact that it was getting colder the farther up they climbed. He reached into his pocket to make sure a seed was still there. He turned to check on the others behind him and saw the worried expressions on their faces. He smiled to reassure them, even though he felt just as nervous as they did. Finally, the rocky slope ended at a steep cliff face. There was nowhere to go except for a narrow ledge that appeared to wind around the side of the mountain. Xavier had to jump to get to it, but he was glad to feel a flat surface under his feet after climbing those rocks for so long. Levi jumped after him, then turned to help Ivy, who snatched her hand away. I can do it myself, she said with a huffy breath. Levi put his hands up and mouthed, Sorry, as Ivy jumped onto the ledge by herself. Brianna was next. She looked at Levi and put her hand for him to grab so he could help her, even though she too could have done it all by herself. Soon all of the kids had made it to the ledge. They took a moment to rest, to fill their lungs with the breath of the source once more. Xavier scouted out the path before them. The ledge rose at a gentler grade, traversing the side of the mountain. There was nothing below it but a mist-shrouded abyss. They'd have to be extremely careful, keeping close to the rock wall and rely on the gripping power of the boots in order to not fall to their deaths. But at least it would be less arduous than climbing boulders. Xavier went back to tell the others, Looks like we will need to stay on this ledge for a while. Whatever you do, keep close to the wall. Don't look down. Keep focused ahead. They all nodded, understanding. What about the dragon? Asked Evan. Xavier glanced up. The dragon continued to circle high in the sky. Maybe he's not interested in us, but keep your seeds ready just in case. The kids got up and followed Xavier as he made his way across the ledge. They walked in silence, concentrating on the narrow path, on the person in front of them, on anything except the shadow passing above them. Xavier felt very exposed. There was no place to hide here, no cover, and they were too far along to make it back to the boulders if something should happen, if the dragon came for them, or if their rock slide, or an avalanche. But he dared not risk falling by trying to go any faster. You have everything you need. Whenever Xavier felt doubts and fears overwhelm him, those words from Ruach came back to him, calming him. He was thankful he wore the helmet, which blocked any unuseful thoughts from taking over his brain. As time went on, Xavier noticed the dragon was dropping lower, closer. He could see its glittering armored scales with needle-like spikes, almost like the quills of a porcupine. Longer, sharper spikes ridged its back, wings, and tail. Its neck was layered in thick scales with short, pointed spikes sticking out all over its head. Steam curled from its nostrils. Xavier felt its beady yellow eyes zero in on him and lost his breath completely. The eyes told him it was on the hunt, and it had found its prey. He quickened his pace along the ledge, urging the rest to follow. As if sensing that the prince warriors were trying to get away, the dragon suddenly dove straight for them, its skeletal wings spread wide, the spikes on either side of its head fanning out. Xavier froze, throwing out one arm to halt the others. He dug his hand into his pocket, grasping the seat and crying out, "Shields!" All the kids deployed their seats as the dragon opened its mouth, revealing several rows of serrated teeth. But no fire came out. Instead, it banked left and whipped its long, forked tail toward them, discharging several razor-sharp spikes, each one a few feet long. The spikes sped like javelins toward the kids and slammed into the side of the mountain, sending up small explosions of pebbles and dust. The black dragon veered away, its tail lashing the air, circling for another strike. "What was that?" Brianna gasped, gazing up at the spikes that surrounded them, hemming them in. "Did that thing just shoot spikes from its tail?" asked Ivy, breathless. "Never saw a dragon do that before," Evan choked out. He glanced at Finn, whose eyes were riveted on the black dragon. "Did you?" Finn just shook his head. Xavier looked to his right and saw that several of the dragon's spikes now blocked their path forward along the ledge. They would have to climb over them or under them somehow, which would make the trek more dangerous. Then, from high above, Xavier heard a piercing screech that filtered through his shield like the wall of a distant siren. But within the sound, he thought he heard words too. "You will fail." His helmet began to glow, pressing down over his ears. The words were instantly replaced by Ruok's whispering voice. "You have everything you need." Wow. Do you ever feel like you're going to fail? Do thoughts like that go through your head? They sure do mine. You have everything you need. But what do we need? Xavier thought to himself. Even if they could get rid of the dragon, how would they get rid of those spikes that blocked their path? He grasped a spike and yanked as hard as he could, trying to pull it out. But it wouldn't budge. He put his seat away so he could use both hands. When that failed, he tried to break it off, but it was too thick and strong. Levi reached over to help. The two of them heaved and strained, but the spikes were immovable. "We could really use those swords right now," murmured Levi. "We have everything we need," said Xavier doggedly. He kicked and shoved at the spikes in frustration. "What's happening?" yelled Evan from the other end of the line. Manuel and the girls were silent, watching Xavier and Levi with nervous eyes. "Can I help?" Finn asked, bending forward so he could see what Xavier and Levi were doing. "Don't do that," cried Evan, pushing him back. "You'll fall." "Just hang on," Xavier called back. "We should go back now," Manuel yelped. "Look, here it comes again." The dragon came in like a jet, strafing the mountain with more spikes. Bursts of rock and dirt clouded the air and ricocheted off their shields. Xavier's shield was down. His eyes filled with dust so he couldn't see. Then something hit his leg, causing it to collapse under him. He reached out blindly as he fell sideways, somehow managing to grab onto one of the embedded spikes. "Xavier!" Levi shouted. Xavier swung with one hand like he was on a trapeze. He reached out the other hand and felt Levi grab it. But then Levi's grip slipped and he was swinging again. He kicked with his legs to try to get back to the ledge, but he was just too far away. He shook his head, clinging to the spike, trying to get his thoughts in order. All he heard were the screams of the other kids and the distant braying cry of the dragon. You will fail. You will fail. Xavier, Levi cried. Xavier glanced over his shoulder to see Levi removing his belt. Just hold still a second. He threw one end of the belt like a lasso, encircling Xavier's leg. Brianna grabbed Levi's shirt, holding him steady as Levi hauled the belt toward him, pulling Xavier in. Keep going, Levi, Brianna cried. Once Xavier's boot touched the ledge, it grabbed on like a suction cup. Give me your arm, Levi shouted. Xavier took a breath and let go of the spike as Levi hoisted him back to the ledge. The two of them collapsed together against the wall, winded and scared. The others gasped. Xavier, are you all right? Asked Brianna. Yeah, said Xavier, pulling himself to a sitting position. Thanks, man. No problem, said Levi. Above them, the dragon continued to circle, its shadow like a presence in their souls, inescapable. What now? Brianna asked. Xavier closed his eyes, resting his head against the wall. He had no idea what to do now. Manuel sank down against the wall. We can't get through with that thing up there, he murmured. Manuel's right, said Evan, sinking down next to Manuel. We'll never get those swords. We have to, said Ivy. We have everything we need. The black dragon shrieked again. You will fail. No, we won't, Ivy answered back in a loud voice as her helmet glowed and pressed against her ears, blocking out the words of the dragon. As if in answer, the dragon swooped in for an attack. The warriors raised their shields, bracing for another round of deadly spikes. And then a new sound joined the dragon's piercing wail, an out-of-tune warbling the kids instantly recognized. Oh my goodness, I wonder what it is. What do y'all think? Dum-da-dum!